Testing 1, 2, 3. Well, it looks like we're back. Of course, we have 0 people online. I don't know what's going on here. I see no viewers back online with me, so that makes me wonder if it's even live at this point. The Rosa Curse. It's just been fun. I don't see a single viewer online. I'm assuming we're live. Yep, we're coming back online. Now I can see people now. It's the Rosa Curse, I'm telling you. People think that I make this stuff up. With 2 minutes to go, everything was going absolutely perfect. We had a power outage. And we're the very last farm or house or whatever you want to call it on the line from the substation. So we get that a lot here. It happens all the time. And I'm surprised it hasn't happened before, to be perfectly honest with you. But wouldn't you know, just with 2 minutes to go, we had over 50 viewers online. And it went off. And then, okay, you think, well, that's bad enough, okay, right? Well, so I get it started again, and would you not know, when I power the PC back on, Windows is doing an update. It's like, it just doesn't quit. So then we get through that, and we come back up, and we go live again. And people are back on there, and I'm starting to talk, and nobody can hear me. And I could not get the sound to work. I finally figured out what it was. Good thing I know a lot about this stuff, or it would be impossible. I finally found the culprit. It was a little switch that somehow got turned off. It's a software switch. It's not a mechanical switch or anything. And somehow that software switch got turned off whenever the electric went off. I don't know why. It just, stuff happens. It's the Rosa Curse. It just is the way. Welcome to my life. Every day is like this with me. Oh my gosh, it's just nuts. We have sound. Well, good. All right. Well, gee whiz. Where do I start? This is going to be mostly, let me just start at the beginning. This is going to be mostly a question and answer shop talk, assuming that we can stay live for a little while. I am going to talk a very short thing about using the right tool for the job. And this is only inspired by a number of comments that have come in over the last week. And it's not to rub anybody's nose in the comment or anything like that. It's just to show you kind of my thought process of why I do what I do. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to you because you think, wow, you could do that so much faster if you just used the XYZ tool, or whatever. So we're going to talk about that. I'm even going to give you a little short demo on that. It's not going to be very long, I don't think. But before we get into that, we had a couple of comments, only a couple, on the farm video where I was walking around showing you the projects. A couple of comments came in on the walnuts, and they'd never heard of a butternut walnut. Well, I thought I'll just show it to you here. It only takes a second. Here is the difference between a regular walnut. This is a regular black walnut. If you know what a black walnut is, that's different than the what they call, I think they call them English walnuts that you buy in the store. These are a little bit more gamey. I don't know. Yeah, they've got a wild flavor to them. I mean, they taste good. I like them, but you kind of have to acquire a little bit of a taste for these, for the walnuts. And this, I only found a half a shell on this one, but you can see it's much different shaped. And this is the butternut here, the longer, skinny one. Now, a lot of people in this, now, by the way, let me back up and tell you, that's not a scientific name. Every area of the United States probably calls it something different. But here in Missouri, at least in this part of the country, people call these the butternut walnut, and these are the regular black walnut. The wives' tale is that this tastes better. These are better flavor, etc. I have both of varieties growing right here on the farm. I eat both varieties, and I seriously couldn't tell in a blindfold test which one's which. They taste identical to me. I don't, and keep in mind, I'm the guy with the super sensitive taste buds. Now, it could be that I'm tasting through the flavor that the average person tastes. I taste down to the root, trust me. And to me, they taste exactly the same. I really couldn't tell in a blind test which one is which. But anyway, that's the butternut, and this is the regular one. Now, I just happened to find one of these growing green right now, the butternut, and you can see that it's this. Now, on this one here, it also has this green shell on it when it's growing, this round one, but it would be almost perfectly round, and I'm sure you've seen those. So it is a little unique. I just thought I'd point that out to you and show it to you because a lot of people have never seen that quote-unquote butternut variety. My goodness, are we still there? Because I'm not seeing any more chats scrolling up the screen. Makes me wonder if we've lost it already. Somebody just throw a chat out there just so I can tell you're still there. Oh my goodness, it's just crazy. I'm beginning to think we've lost you because it says 70 viewers, but nothing's moving on the screen, and that makes me think something's wrong. I hope you're still there. It would not surprise me if I'm just talking to myself. Oh, there's a scroll. There's one. Still here. Okay, good. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, and Jerry, too. Okay, I see you guys. You're scrolling. Okay, we're good. I don't trust anything anymore. You can probably tell. Now it's just scrolling like crazy, which is what normally it does. Okay, so without further ado, while you're thinking of your questions, be thinking of your questions because otherwise this is going to be really short. After all this trouble, I hope it's not really short. Okay, so talking about the right tool for the job. You guys saw in one of my videos recently where I sawed the whole back off of a guitar, and I used this saw right here and put it up there where you can see it. And anyway, it's the kerf on this, they call this a razor saw because the kerf is seriously the thickness of a razor blade. This is, I think, an 8/1000 or a 9/1000. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's either 8 or 9/1000 thick. And your single-edge razor blade can be that thin, or it can be up to like 11/1000. So it can actually be thicker than this blade, depending on which razor blade you buy. But anyway, my point is, this cuts a very, very, very fine kerf. And I'm going to do it right here on screen. Now, this is not the way to do this, holding it in your hand. It's really hard to do. So it may be a flop here. My demo may be a flop, but I'm just trying to show you. Okay, there is the kerf it just cut, and I don't even think this camera, yeah, there you can see it. There's the kerf it just cut right there. Very, very fine kerf. So that's why I chose to use this saw rather than, here's what a number of folks mentioned, why don't you just use one of these? It would have been so much faster, it would have done some, you would have been done in half the time. Well, this is very big, very awkward, very bulky, and it just vibrates to beat the band. It doesn't show up very good on video, but there's a lot of vibration going on here. But here's the real reason why I didn't use a tool like this. And let me just show you. See, look at the difference in the kerf. Whoops, I got to get it in the right camera. It goes backwards for me. But you can see there's a huge, huge difference. And, trying to control this very delicately around binding and around stuff, this would definitely do it. And yes, you can slow these down, and yes, you can get different bits and all that, but still, which one do you think would do a better job? And that's why I chose to do the hand method. You could definitely do it with that, there's no question. But it would just be, also very risky that you break something too, because the other thing you have to remember about woods on instruments is the older it is, the more brittle it is. And, you know, even a vibration can just cause the wood to crack and bust right down the... So you got to be very, very, very careful about your approach. And I will tell you that my approach on using tools on an instrument is just about the same as it is on fixing a problem. I always do the easy thing, the simple thing, the calm thing, if you will, first. Do the simple thing first. Try that first. If that doesn't work, you can always go more aggressive, you know. And that's, so then I might, maybe somewhere down the road, I might consider using this if I really could, if I've exhausted everything else. Now, again, I'm not poking fun at anybody or anything if anybody thinks that. That's not it at all. I'm just trying to explain because people legitimately ask these questions. So, like another person suggested that I adapt this for removing bridge plates. Well, yeah, you know, if you had a lot of open area, you probably could, I think. But, you know, you got to realize that most of the time when we're taking a bridge plate off, we're doing it through a sound hole. First of all, this isn't going to go through there very good. I mean, it'll go through there, but not very good. And you sure can't bend it back up. And even if you could bend it back up, you know, you've got this X-brace in the way right here. So coming through the sound hole, then you got to get around this X-brace and come back to this. So, you know, using a tool like this just couldn't possibly work on removing a bridge plate. It just would be impossible. But while I've got this out, I will demonstrate, again, the right tool for the job. And you can see here that you can reach through here with this, and you can reach behind the bridge plate, although I can't do it on camera very, very well here, because I can't hold it. But anyway, you reach through the hole, and then you get behind this, and you pull this off. And that's how you get the bridge plate off. And, you know, it doesn't just pull off real easy. You got to heat that bridge plate up really good, you know, and it's best if you can heat it through the top here, but sometimes you can reach a small heater inside and heat up the actual plate itself. And that's my little small bridge heater that I made can reach through here, and we can use that to heat this. But then we pull it off with this. So all that to say is that, you know, I'm not saying I do everything right. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying the way I do it is the only way you should do it. I'm not saying that either. I'm just, because I've said many times there's a million ways to skin every cat. But what I'm talking about when I say use the right tool for the job is be sure you don't do something that's going to create more problems or make a mess while you're, I mean, you can still get the job done, but you're making a mess while you're doing it. So, you know, that's what I have to consider. And you got to remember, too, that I'm doing this for customers, and customers don't like it when you make a mess on their instruments, you know. You got to be kind of careful with them. You are doing better on camera than I could by far. Well, it's all backwards. It's, you know, I don't know why, but especially since we went to this little webcam. For some reason, that screws with my mind more. I don't know why. The other camera is the same way, but I guess I'm used to being in front of that camera all the time, you know, the bigger camera. For some reason, this one messes with my head. Anyway, so I hope that makes sense to everybody about the tool thing and why I do what I do. And like I said, I never, ever have said you should do it like I do it because I'm doing the best. And, you know, I never say that. You know, there's always a million ways to do everything. And I learn all the time a better way to do stuff. But boy, the one thing you don't want to do is do the big thing first. Always do the big thing last, because you can, you know, you build up to it, you know what I mean? And then, you know, if this doesn't work, then go a little bigger. And if that doesn't work, go a little bigger, you know, until you finally get to where you have to be. And that's the way it is, even like on removing that bridge plate. You know, I always try the simple thing first, but by God, that bridge plate's coming out of there one way or the other. And so you've got to get it out of there, and you have to get more aggressive and more aggressive and more aggressive. But you don't start with the most aggressive thing first. Never do that. Hope that makes sense. And I think I'm done already. So if you don't have questions, this is really a short one. All right, be sure to put a bunch of question marks in front of your question. I'm looking here. I thought everything is a hammer. You're right, everything is a hammer. But actually, that goes right along with the discussion. Use the right tool for the job. Obviously, that's meant to be funny that everything is a hammer because everybody does it. I do it too. You use whatever you have in your hand as a hammer. But realistically, you really should use the right tool for the job. Is it possible to make an adjustable nut for first action height rather than filing the slots? An adjustable nut. Well, I don't know what you got in mind there, but I can't picture that too easily. I guess anything's possible. I could, in my deepest, darkest recessions of my mind, think of a way you could make an adjustable nut. But I don't know that it's all that necessary. It's really not that hard to set up a regular nut. The thing about the nut is, and this is my opinion, you don't have to agree with this, but my opinion is the nut almost makes no difference to your instrument at all. I don't care if it's plastic, I don't care if it's ceramic, I don't care if it's pearl or anything else. Because 90+% of the sound comes from back that way, not up at the nut end. The only thing the nut does, in my opinion, is make it easy to play or hard to play. If it's set up right, it's easy to play. If it's set up wrong, it's hard to play. And when you note the string, by the way, and you pick that string, the nut has nothing to do with the sound whatsoever. So, my point is the nut's minimal importance, in my opinion. The only importance it has is to make the instrument good, easy to play, and all that. Once you get it set up right, you're done. And so making it adjustable really doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose, in my opinion. You could argue that point. Can I remove the bridge plate without removing the bridge? Yes, we do that all the time. And in fact, that's my preference. I much prefer to take the bridge plate off with the bridge in place. Now, here's why. It's real important. That's a really good question. I'm glad you said that. When the bridge is on here, you have something stiff to pry against. When the bridge is off of here, you're putting all that pressure on this soft spruce. So you're pushing against soft spruce, trying to push off a very well-glued bridge plate. Now, granted, you can heat it better when the bridge is off of here. That part's true. But that doesn't necessarily help you all that much. You can heat it through the bridge, down through the bridge plate. You could argue that you're softening your bridge and all that too, but I've never seen that be much of a problem, to be honest with you. That little heater I have that I reach through the sound hole, we can put that through and actually heat the bridge plate on the inside a lot of times, and that's what we do. But if you don't have one of those, then you'll have to do most of your heating from the outside. But truly, it is better to take the bridge plate off when the bridge is still on there, because otherwise you are definitely, almost guarantee you're going to crack your top. And we've done it. I'm not going to lie to you and say we've been perfect. You'll crack the top when you take the bridge plate off when there's no bridge on here. You could still crack it even when there is a bridge on there. But my point is, if you can, leave the bridge on to take the bridge plate off. You'll be way better off. Way better off. Very good question. Boy, they're scrolling up the screen kind of fast here. Update on the shed on the outside of the rental. It's basically done. I just need to put the doorknobs on, and I do need to go back in there and do a little bit more insulation and things like that. But I always, it's not like I'm putting it off. It's just like it's good enough for now. And my priorities, I've got so many of them that it's not like I'm procrastinating. I just kind of prioritize, and that's just way low on the priority right now. But coming this fall, when winter starts to hit, that will be a very high priority. But right now, I just don't want to take the 5 minutes it takes to fix it because I got too many other irons in the fire. But otherwise, it's basically finished. Okay, let me see here. What's the latest on the Scottish 12 string? The latest on the Scottish 12 string is, and I think I mentioned this a couple times now, that I basically know what happened to the fellow. It's not good. I'm not going to talk about it. You know, it's a personal matter, I'm sure, and for at least for the foreseeable future, I own the 12 string. I thought about just auctioning it off, but on the other hand, I don't have a 12 string that I built. You know, I might just keep it and pass it down through the family. I really don't know yet. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. Where do I buy my truss rod material? Well, you'll be amazed. I just go to a box store and buy them. You know, they have the little iron racks there in the hardware section where they've got little round rods. And I buy the 3/16 inch most of the time. You know, is what I typically buy. Cold rolled steel, 16 inch. I mean, 3/16 of an inch, sorry. That's where I get it. It's nothing, it doesn't have to be anything all that super technical. Let's see, will a hairline crack in the side of a guitar affect the sound of quality? It can. You know, and the reason I say it can is because there's all kinds of sympathetic vibrations in instruments. You can have the biggest crack in the world, it may not affect the sound at all. You can have the tiniest crack and it may affect the sound a lot, and it can be vice versa. So, you know, it's on a case-by-case basis, and it really depends on a lot of factors. I mean, it depends on the strings, it depends on the way the instrument braces were carved and put in, and I mean, there's a million things. So there's no one answer to that question other than, yeah, it could affect the sound. Most likely it won't, and most likely a crack in the side isn't really that big of a structural issue either, most likely, although it could be. It depends. Like if it's a Gibson, it might be a structural issue because those sides are always pushing out, and if you got a crack in those sides on those old Gibsons, it could really bust the whole guitar open. So, you know, you might want to get that fixed if it's an old Gibson for sure. How do you fix a neck where... Whoops, started to scroll up the screen on me. How do you fix a neck? Well, I think I lost that question. I think it must have scrolled up. All right. Okay, I found it again. How do you fix a neck where there is a bump at the 14th fret caused notes to buzz? Okay, well, that 14th fret bump is pretty darn common on most guitars because that's where your neck is attached to the body. And, you know, again, I'm just exaggerating, but, you know, you've got a slight slope up from your neck up to the body, and then it flattens out. Well, that creates a hump there because when you bend that tang of the fretboard down to go flat to the top, you know, it creates a little bit of a bulge there. About the only way you can fix that is to file through it. If it's actually high, you pretty much just have to file through it. You could take the frets out, you know, lower the fretboard there a little bit with some sandpaper or something, put the fret back in. More than likely, you'll still have to file the fret level. You know, there's a million ways to fix everything, but that's how I'd do it. I would just get the fret level because that's all it amounts to. When you get a buzz, most likely you got a fret that's out of level, and in that case, that's where the fret is out of level. It's at that bend. That's a real common one, though. That happens all the time. How important is it to store a guitar in a proper humidity? Well, you know, I've talked about this a million times, and I'm the one oddball out, I'll admit, on this. To openly admit, I have the different opinion than almost everybody else, and that is, you know, humidity is important. I'm not saying it's not. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that you don't need to humidify your instrument. I am saying that in about 99% of the cases. I say you just don't need to humidify it. In fact, I say you cause way more trouble by humidifying it than you do by not humidifying it. I say keep your instrument in, your typical air-conditioned house. You'll be fine. If you live in a real high humidity area, then you need a dehumidifier, not a humidifier. If you live down in Florida and you keep your windows open, yeah, I'd be putting your guitar in the ice box or something. I mean, no, I don't know what to explain there. When they suck in humidity, they swell. Expelling humidity, they shrink very little. Once they've swelled, they'll shrink a lot, of course. It's just like the cabinets in your house. But if you keep your instrument from the day you get it in a fairly well controlled temperature, climate, location, you're fine. You can take it outside, play it for half a day, take it back in, put it away, it'll be fine. But if you keep it in a high humidity location, you got problems. If you keep it in a super hot location like an attic, super hot and super dry, you got problems. Anytime you do extremes, you got problems. You keep it in the normal area, you're pretty good. And I stick by that. Now, the one exception with that is if you buy a guitar that was built in the jungles, equatorial jungle somewhere, and I'm not saying that's negative, I'm just saying if because they do make guitars in those areas, if you buy a guitar in that area, ship it up to your, nice dry climate air-conditioned house, you're going to have problems. And vice versa. If you build it, in a dry climate and you ship it to the equatorial jungle, you're going to have problems. That's too big of a humidity change. But most instruments are built in a climate-controlled location, and if you keep them in a climate-controlled location, you're pretty good. You start adding humidity to it, I guarantee you're causing more trouble than you are by taking humidity away. Guarantee you. You can say what you want, but I guarantee you. Oh my goodness, I got on that soapbox again. Doggone you anyway. All right, let me see here. Trying to find where I'm at. Okay, the Alan's asking about the fret file, about the wide insert I use. Yeah, I'll try to explain that again. Let me find that here. Probably won't show up real good on this camera, but again, because I have the resolution set low because of the streaming. This is the wide insert that's in there right now. And you can see how the edges are really shiny. What I did was you can take this insert out. It's probably too tight to take it out here on camera, but you can take the insert out, and I just take it over there and I roll it from one side to the other on my sander. Like, in other words, I'll sand off this edge and I'll sand off this edge, and I leave the curl in the middle. Now, why did I do that? Because I have learned that using the largest crowning file recrowns your frets way faster than any other of the crowning files. I still use these files, don't get me wrong, I still use them, but if all I'm really doing is recrowning the frets, I typically go with this one. And the reason I ground the edges off is because the edges used to stick down so far that you could only recrown the really tall, big frets with this. Now I can recrown almost any fret with this particular file. But, in other words, I use this one way more than I use the other two smaller ones. This one here's for the tiny mandolin frets, and this one's for the medium guitar frets or banjo frets or something like that. But typically, I just use the big one now. I have found that it's so much faster and it rounds them so much quicker that I'm good with that. So I hope that makes sense to you. All right, let's see. Scrolling down here. Tips. Well, I think we're providing a few tips. I hope we are. How to get the neck straight on a Yamaha classical guitar without removing the neck from the body. Oh my goodness. Well, you know, I'm sorry to tell you that I'm not the expert on the classical guitars. I'll just be honest and throw that out there first. I have since, in the last year or so, I have made a decision that I'm just not going to accept any more classical guitars in the shop, and I'm not going to accept any more ovations in the shop. The reason being is that they're just a horse of a different color. There's nothing wrong with those instruments. They're fine instruments. They're just not what I'm comfortable working on, if that makes any sense to you. I don't feel like I'm the expert in those areas. The classical guitar luthiers are kind of elitists also, kind of like the violin luthiers are elitists, and basically they think they know better than anybody else about everything. So they don't really like it when you work on their instruments. Now, that doesn't stop me on the violins too much because, most of what they're talking about is baloney. A lot of what they say is very true, but a lot of what they say is just old wives' tales that have been passed down and perpetuated, just like the humidity thing. It's just a bunch of baloney. Anyway, not going to go any further into that, but the point is on the classical guitar neck, they're made so different than a standard, acoustic guitar, that steel string acoustic guitar, that I don't feel I'm the expert on that, and I'm sorry, I just can't help you with it. Fixing a sunken top on a mandolin. Well, I'm not going to tell you this is the best way to fix it, but a temporary fix, and an easy temporary fix, is to just put a sound post in there, just kind of like you do on a violin. Now, that ain't necessarily easy to do, because if you're not used to putting in sound posts, it's kind of hard. But you have to, first of all, you have to figure out how long the sound post needs to be, and you have to be able to get in there and jack up that sunken area and put that sound post in there and stand it up. Basically, when you put a sound post in, you start it and I'm exaggerating the angle, but you start it at an angle and you stand it up, and that raises, or puts the pressure at both ends then, because when you stand it up, so you can see how narrow it is, and then you're raising it up and you're spreading, see how my fingers are spreading out there. So that's really what you're doing. And what you have to do if you have a sunken top mandolin is to figure out what is the optimal length there. Now, the way you might be able to do that, and I'm just saying might, is to check another area of the top that's not sunk in, a similar like area. Like maybe if say it's sunk on the treble side, then maybe you could check the bass side, see how long that is, and start doing some experiments to see if you can get a piece, to fit up in there. That's the best I can tell you on that. It's not the best for your sound. Your sound is going to be affected on your mandolin when you do that. But if you're looking for a quick and dirty way to fix it, and you just want to be able to play it, like maybe it's a young person just wanting to learn. I have done that several times on some of the cheaper mandolins that had the top sunk in. I put sound posts in there, and it seemed to work fine, but the sound wasn't that good. It does kind of mute the sound on those. Makes you wonder why it works on a violin. But a violin works on a totally different principle. It's mostly vibration from that bow. It creates a longer vibration, which sends the vibration everywhere, where a mandolin is a quick type vibration, and that sound post doesn't get to work like it does on a violin. That's my theory, totally my theory. You probably won't hear that theory anywhere else. Okay, next question here. Here's one that doesn't have the question marks in front of it. It says, hey, can you tell us about the proper way to get a neck off and what to do if you run into trouble? Well, I've got a lot of videos out there about removing necks on guitars and stuff, and you know, there's no easy way, and it really depends on the instrument. You know, if the instrument comes in and it's already got a loose neck, well, you're already got a leg up. But if it doesn't have anything loose, then you got issues. And the most common way is to remove the fret that is directly over where the end of the slot should be, or the dovetail. Right at where the end of the dovetail should be, there's a fret there, and you take that fret out, you drill some holes down through there, and you put a lot of moisture down through those holes into that slot area, and you just work with it. It's not simple at all. You put a lot of steam in there. You know, you'd have to watch the videos. It's too complicated to try to just explain one way to do it. But taking a neck off of an instrument is a highly destructive way to do it. And then, by the way, you also have a neck press, and I've used that in my videos too. Someone sent me a neck press, and I kind of rebuilt it a little bit to work better for me, and it really does a good job of pulling necks out of the slot. But you got to be careful with that too, because if you force them out, you're going to break your whole neck block and everything. You've got to get them loose before you force them out. It's not an easy job. Taking a neck out of an instrument is not simple at all. How do I clean the lines and edges when I'm doing inlay? Well, I do it mostly with a single edge razor blade. It's a knack, you know. Maybe I take too much for granted because I've been doing it for so long. I think it's pretty simple, but I see other folks' attempts at it. And I find that maybe it's not as simple as I think it is. It's all in about how you hold the razor blade. It's all how you attack it. You know, mostly you don't want chatter. You know, chatter is, those of you who are machinists and do a lot of things in the shop know what chatter is, obviously. Chatter is where something bounces and skips and kind of usually makes a chatter sound, just kind of a noise. And when you're hearing that or feeling that, you know you're not doing real good work. So you want to avoid what they call chatter. And so, like if this was the guitar, you want to be able to hold, the looser you hold it like this, out like this, the more chatter you're going to get. And the best way I can explain that is if you've ever heard the chatter on a chalkboard and the squeak on a chalkboard. When you hold the chalk at the very end and you push it up the chalkboard, it chatters and it squeaks. That's basically the same thing with your razor blade. So you want to choke up on your razor blade almost as much as possible, and you scrape like that. And like I put like a finger on here, like as a depth gauge, like my fingernail. I'll do something to make a depth gauge so I don't go too deep into the binding. In other words, go past the binding and get into the wood over here. I don't want to get into the wood over here. So I'll make a depth gauge, and I'll come down and through and scrape the binding like so. And you should be able to see a very smooth flake of binding coming off if you're doing it right. You know, again, I don't mean to pick on people because it just is what it is, but you know, I can use them as examples, unfortunately. And that guitar where I sawed the back off, that particular, I think, customer had tried to smooth his binding in a lot of places. Well, I could tell he got a lot of chatter. And that's what made me think that he took the back off of it or the top off of it, because the binding just was so chattered up. But anyway, the point is you shouldn't be getting chatter. It should be pretty darn smooth. You should almost not be able to see any marks in it when you're done. If you're seeing marks, you need to work on your technique. It's the best I can explain it. It's the kind of thing, again, where it's just experience. I mean, you just got to do it and get after it. But that's how I do 90% of it is just with that. Now, when I get down to super detail work, my tool often of choice is this. I like an X-Acto blade with this round, with the round bottom on it, because I can get in and, and that round curvature keeps me from scratching something I don't want to scratch. And I can get in and I can pick, like say you got black dye on your binding and you're scraping that clean. You can get in there and get real detailed and get that out of there. This is really good for that kind of detail, especially in tight places like around the mandolin scroll and places like that where the big razor blade doesn't fit in there very good. So I go to that. I also even will use just the straight X-Acto blade when I get into that detail area. And then finally, I made a special tool. I believe this was a dental pick. I think the pick broke off, and I physically heated that. You may even be able to, oops, I don't have it in the camera. I'm pointing it at the screen instead of the camera, sorry. I made this was a dental pick, and I think the tip of it broke off, and I took a torch and heated it up like red hot, and then took that little hammer and smashed it out flat, kind of round, and then I sharpened it. And that little thing there, you can get in, and again, I use it as a scraper. I get into little places where I need to scrape, and I can use that as a scraper. This end is more of a hook end on it, by the way. And sometimes I get into places where I have to scrape out a little slot or something, and I'll use that for that. So that's just another specialty tool that you never see probably, but that I use all the time actually. You just got to have a myriad of little tools and trinkets and things that you use. But anyway, I hope that helps you on the binding. It's kind of just a practice makes perfect thing. It really is. You have to do a lot of it. They scroll up the screen so fast whenever I move my cursor here because there's so many of them piled up behind. We got a lot of questions this morning. Let's see. I've seen you bevel bridge pins several times. Could you give a more detailed explanation as to why? Yeah. I have a bridge pin close by. I don't know that I do, unfortunately. Well, I mean, simply said, it's when you're pushing your string down through the hole. I mean, like you put the string down through the hole. Now you're putting your pin in, and if this is the end of the pin, you're pushing it down, and now the ball can physically set on the bottom of that pin. If you bevel this off, that ball cannot, and the pin will have to slide past the ball. And that's just about the bottom line of it. I mean, like if my end of my thumb is the ball, you can see how I can push that ball down, and it will push the ball down, and it does happen quite often. A lot of people don't realize that that's happened, and you can even play the life of the string with that ball on the end of your pin and not even realize it. But if you bevel that, then you can actually feel the ball then slide past the pin as you're putting the pin in the hole, and you're not on the end of the ball then for sure. I've been in jams more than one time where I've seen the guy's pin go flying off across the room because he had the string on the end of the pin, and finally that string just pulled out and the pin went flying. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, but I've seen it quite a few times. So anyway, that's my point of beveling the pins. The ball cannot sit on the end that way. I think we scrolled quite a ways here. It looks like someone made a donation. Thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate that. Okay, there's the bridge pin beveling, so let's go to the next question. Bridge mount for skin-based drum. I think I know how I'm going to mount the neck. Well, I'm sorry, Richard, but you got me totally stumped on that one. I really don't know much about that. Maybe I'm missing your point. A lot of times it's the wording on how you say something. Like somebody was talking about sinker wood. Well, I'd never heard it called sinker wood. I've heard lots of people using wood that was, sunk in the bottom of a river for, submerged in a river for years and years, or in the bottom of a lake for years and years, and building an instrument out of it. I've heard of that, but I never heard it called sinker wood. So that in the last shop talk, somebody asked me that question, and then they explained later what it was. Well, yeah, definitely. I've heard of that, but I just didn't know it was called that specific term. And I think it just depends locally where you are in the country, on the term you use a lot of times. What wood used on the end and tail areas on that new guitar? Are you talking about, if you're talking about the actual blocks, in this one I'm using walnut. I use walnut quite a bit for the blocks. It's just a wood I have a lot of. It's a good stable wood. It dries well. It stays pretty stable. So I use walnut quite a bit for that. Most any hardwood will work for your block here. I definitely do not recommend using a softwood for your blocks. I definitely recommend using a hardwood for your blocks. I definitely recommend making sure that that is a stable piece of wood. In other words, it's not a green piece of wood. You would definitely have a problem if you used a slightly too humid piece of wood for your blocks. That would not be a good thing at all. So, anyway, that's just walnut on those, if that's what you're talking about. If you're talking about here on the end, that can be almost anything, because this is totally decoration. You can pretty much let your imagination run wild on the end here, if that's what you're referring to. In my case, on that one, I don't know yet. I haven't made up my mind what I'm going to do, but there'll be some, probably some maple in there, and there'll probably be some other colored wood in there, and some design, and I really just don't know yet. I haven't made up my mind. Haven't sat down and played with it yet to figure it out. Okay, let me go to the next one. Okay, what is your opinion on zero fret versus a nut? Well, I'm not a fan of the zero fret. Let me just say this. I'm not totally opposed to it either. It's just my preference not to have a zero fret. I just like the look and feel of a nut, I guess. Maybe that's just the old crony in me. To me, I've always, it may go back to when I was a kid. Couple of the cheap instruments I had back then had zero frets. I've always associated zero frets to cheaper instruments. That's just an association I have. It doesn't mean that that's true at all. I just want to be clear on that. It's just kind of an association in my own head. And so I don't really like zero frets, probably never have. So you just got to kind of weigh that in my explanation here. But now in terms of setup, I'll just be honest. Your zero fret's much easier, much easier. There's no question. Because your zero fret is just basically like noting at the first fret, your second fret back from your first fret after you've noted the first fret, that's the equivalent, so it's so much simpler to use a zero fret. I'm not going to lie to you about that. It's if it was your first instrument and you just don't want, and you're not good at setup, maybe your zero fret's your best way to go. But I personally am not crazy about the zero fret. Let's go to the next thing. How do I sharpen a razor saw? Very, very, very easy question. You just buy a new razor blade. Razor saw blade, I should say. Now, seriously, I just bought some new ones, and that's what, you don't sharpen them. I bought 2 new ones. So, I've got 2 of them in stock here for that razor saw. It's cheaper and easier. You'd never be able to sharpen it. It's got like 60 teeth per inch. You couldn't even see it, let alone sharpen it. Yeah, check out the videos on removing a neck. You really should. If you just type in, by the way, I'm sure most of you already know this, but the reason I always put RSW in the title is so you can search with that on YouTube. You type in RSW and neck reset, or RSW neck removal, or something like that, or just RSW neck, and you'll pull up a lot of videos that have those key words. So hope that makes sense to you. And pretty much any subject you want to, I mean, I got close to 700 videos out there now. Maybe I've already passed 700. I can't find the darn number in YouTube anymore. I don't know where they moved it. But anyway, I've got a lot of videos out there, and it's really close to 700. So, you know, let me just say one more thing about that. People are constantly asking me, which video is it that you did such X, Y, and Z? And the truth is, 99 times out of 100, I don't know. And that's just the truth of it. You know, how do you index 700 videos when every single video might have 50 different subjects in it? You know, I mean, seriously, it's just impossible. And they all run together for me, unfortunately. I just can't tell you which one to go look at. I just don't know. So it's just a random search, but that's why I have RSW in the title, is so you can type in RSW and then whatever your subject is, and that way it'll lock it into my videos for the most part. I mean, some other videos may pop up too, but you'll lock it into my videos for the most part that way. Okay, let me go on further here. Next question. Yeah, someone made a comment there. Sorry to hear the Scottish mandolin's probably not coming home to Scotland. Yeah, unfortunately not. Sad deal there on a lot of levels, trust me. Which Proxon router model do you have or use? I've only got the one, and the truth is I don't know. It's got IBS/E up here in the upper left, and then it says number 22455. That's all I know about it. There's another number here, LU6868, it looks like. Don't have my close-up glasses on, and that's a really tiny number. You know, I'll say it again, the Proxon's fine. I way prefer the Dremel over the Proxon, though. I mean, I don't even think it's real comparable. Power-wise, the Dremel, the one I have, is way more powerful. The speed is way faster, and it's 10 times easier to grip. Oh my gosh, the grip is just... So the only way I use the Proxon at all is with its base, because it's just hard to hold. So I'm not a Proxon fan, I'm sorry. Just not at all a Proxon fan. Yeah, somebody's asking about the heating with the electric insert. We've tried that. Now, I'll be honest, we don't have the quote-unquote official electric insert deal. We have something someone sent me. Let me just get it real quick. I'll show you. We have this one, and someone sent it to us as a gift, and we have tried it several times by inserting it down in the hole for the neck removal. And you know, I think there's a bit of hype going on there. We can't seem to make it do a whole lot. It doesn't seem to, you know, I mean, it softens the glue a little bit, kind of just like heating a bridge plate or something. I mean, it softens it, but that don't mean it turned loose. You know, softening and turning loose is two different things, and you got to get it to turn loose to get the neck out of there. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it still might have its application. You get water down in there, and then you can put this down in there to kind of steam it, that may be where it shines a little bit more. But truthfully, I'm not a fan of the dry neck removal method. At least maybe if someone demoed it to me where I could really see what they're doing, and I know there are videos out there, I just don't have time to look into it. The methods we use seem to work for me, and I'm happy with those. So at this point in time, that's the way I'm doing it. What is the best set that you can buy as far as a fret crowning and leveling? Well, I don't know. That's the truth. On the leveling, I made my own. I've shown this many, many times, but on the leveling, I just make my own. And to me, I don't think you could do any better than this. I seriously don't. You can spend a lot more money, and you can buy those big, fancy, long ones, and you can do all those kinds of things. But from my money, with my experience, you cannot beat this. This was just a 6-inch mill bastard file. It's it's not a double cut. It's just a single cut file. And as I've said many, many times, and I hate to keep saying these things because it sounds like a broken record, but there is no such thing as a flat file. Even though everyone thinks files are perfectly flat, they're not. And you got to make sure when you put your file on a little board like this that you put you put it on like this. In other words, the curved, the convex side down, the curved side down, and the hollow concave side up. And every file has that. It's so minimal that you can barely detect it with your eye. But if you look really close, it's detectable, and you've got to make sure that you got the curved side down. If you don't, it will not work well. And then the last thing is that I file the whole, or grind, I should say, grind the end of this off, and I grind the end of this off round so that those don't hit the frets. This, to me, is your best leveling tool you can get. Now, you have to learn. It's just like the binding thing. It's experience. You got to learn how to use it. Day one, you may not do the best job in the world with that, but in my opinion, it's the best way to do it. I don't, those long things, they're fine. To me, I'm sorry, I'm going to offend some people, but to me, that's more of an amateur tool. And if you're an amateur, that might be your best bet. I'm not knocking it. Again, there's a million ways to do everything. But for me, because I have to do so many and I have to do them fast and I have to blend a lot of areas, like that hump at the 14th fret, that's a blendable area. And I'll blend that with this, where you'll be filing all day long trying to fix that with those long deals. So anyway, that's my opinion again, and I'm welcome to my own opinion. Okay. So anyway, that's my fret. Now you said that fret crowning. I just buy the StewMac version of the fret crowning tools. So, for what it's worth, that's where I get them. I want that guitar. Well, I can't say who owns that one, but I'd say the chances are slim that you're going to get it. I can't mention who owns it because it's a surprise deal for someone else. But I would say your odds of getting that guitar are slim to zero and then some. Anyway, let me go on and see if I can find another question. There was Doug, and he just scrolled up the screen really fast. Bought 2 foam cutters and drilled. Okay. Foam cutters and drilled 2 16th-inch holes and removed the neck. Worked okay. Now, I assume you're talking about doing it dry. Well, I would say you had really much better luck than I've had, Doug. We've tried it a bunch of times, and we can't even get any movement out of it when we do the dry thing. And that thing gets really hot, so I know it's not a temperature thing. Yeah, Earl is exactly, his comment on the 0 fret is exactly my comment, because that's exactly where, I was introduced to them was back at about in the 70s, and the 0 fret thing, and there was a lot of cheap guitars that had 0 frets, and maybe I should get over that, because seriously, the 0 fret is by far the easiest way to set your action. There's no question. Not going to argue that at all. But I just don't like the look of it, number one, and it just seems like a cop-out almost. I shouldn't say that, but that's what it seems like. I'm sure it's fine. And I'm sure there's some high-end guitars that use them, and I'm sure they're fine. Hey, I'm getting a lot of thank yous. You're sure welcome, folks. I appreciate it. You know, I just, again, I seriously, I don't want this to sound stupid, but I don't even feel like I'm the expert in everything. I mean, I don't. I just show you how I do stuff and the way I've learned to do it over the years, and there's better ways on some things. I know that, and that's why I don't like to use the word teach. I see that in a lot of videos. I'm going to teach you how to can these prunes. I'm going to teach you this. I'm going to teach you that. Well, fine. I don't teach you anything. I just show you what I do. And if you learn something from it, then that's wonderful. But I seriously, I just don't feel like I'm arrogant enough to say that I'm teaching you anything. I just show you what I do and the way I do it. And sometimes it's maybe the best way, and sometimes it's probably not. The razor saw blades are Gyros, Gyros, and I could tell you where I got them, but I can't remember the name of it. It's a regular woodworking supply company online, but I think if you search on that, razor saw Gyros, Gyros, I think you'll find them. Another little addition there with the donation. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that very much. Here's a question. Backing up here, I think I missed a couple. What is your percentage on lost tools? How many do you put away and then not find for years? Well, Gordon, actually, I'm not too bad at losing tools. Where the tools get lost, and everybody can say this, and it may not be true in all cases, but in my case, it's pretty true. I seriously have a lot of tools still that I bought when I was a teenager. My son makes fun of me all the time. He says, everything you had since you were 19 years old. And he says that. But the truth is, I've always taken care of my tools, and I've always put them away, and I've always kept pretty darn good track of them. You noticed I didn't have too much trouble finding any of those few things I went to get, because I generally put them back where they go. I'm pretty organized on my tools. Now, that's not to say that I don't get them scattered. I scatter them a lot, especially over there in the metal shop when I'm working on big projects. Like I've got her horse trailer. That horse trailer I started to work on a couple years ago when she bought it, and I knew it was a piece of junk. I got it back in the shop again. I'm going to try to finish that thing back up and get it out of here. I never ever quit working on something. I just prioritize it, and it went way down on the priority there for a long time, and now it's back up on the priority. And as a matter of fact, this weekend I'm tearing into it big time, and I'm going to try to get that horse trailer finished. It won't finish this weekend, let me just say that for sure, but I'm going to try to get it finished, and I'll try to put a big dent into it this weekend. Okay, let me go on a little further here. What's your percentage of lost tools? I just don't lose them. That's the answer of that. I truly don't. I keep them for years and years and years. Now, every once in a blue moon, I'll leave something off somewhere, like in a barn or something, and then I'll find that a year or two later. Yeah, it does happen to me. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't happen that often with me. My son, on the other hand, shoot. He thinks tools are use them one time, throw them away. I'm pretty sure that's what he believes. Just unbelievable how terrible he is with his stuff like that on everything. And he did not get that from me. I don't know where he got it from, but he did not get that from me. But he's seriously that way. It's just terrible. I really hate it when he even borrows one of my tools, because odds are I won't get it back, and this other odds are it'll come back busted or rusted or something. I saw a luthier laminate two sides together to make them rigid. He said it made the top and back vibrate more and made it louder. What's your opinion? Well, I say everybody's welcome to their opinion on that one, Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert, I should say, Randall. No, yeah, whatever you want to believe on that's fine, but no, you're not going to convince me of that one. Sorry, I disagree completely. Yeah, just disagree completely. What do I think about a Plek machine for setups? There again, the term Plek, I don't know what that means offhand. I'm probably familiar with what you're talking about, but I don't know that term. When will Emery have more songs? She is awesome. Yeah. That's a whole nother story all by itself. She is awesome. And you ought to see her art. Oh my gosh. She's one of those super realist persons. She has that ability. She can draw something and you will absolutely swear it is a photograph. You can be from here to my camera this close and you can look at it and go, that's a photograph. You will think that. That's how good she is at drawing. It's uncanny believable. It's just nuts. And she's drawn a few of our grandkids and put them on the wall, and I swear all the way, especially when, if you're any distance from it at all, 3 feet away, 5 feet away, you'll swear it's a big blown up photograph. It's that good. It's crazy good. So Emery's got a lot of talents in a lot of ways is what I'm saying. She's a very talented person. Her whole family is, really. I'm looking, guys, I think we've about exhausted our time. We got a late start there, and I know we've probably gone past our hour already. I'm going to take one more question, and we'll call it quits here. Looks like I've got one down here at the bottom. How would the zero fret be installed? Well, you'd be better off buying a fretboard that was designed for a zero fret. In other words, I'm sure, I've never looked for one, so I may be talking, I may just be blowing smoke here. But I would imagine they sell fretboards with a zero fret. So I would buy one like that if you could. If you can't buy one like that, then your zero fret has to go right at the very end of your fretboard. And if you're really splitting hairs, it has to be inset half the thickness of the tang of the fret, if that makes sense to you, to get it perfectly on center. It probably wouldn't matter that much. Only a dog would hear that, but if you really wanted to be perfect, that's what you need to do. So if that makes any sense. And then you'd have to put a block of wood on the other side of it to hold it in place. And your best bet would probably be to put a block of wood on the end of your fretboard and then resaw the fret slot. That would probably be your very best way to do it. In fact, that would be the way I think I'd recommend if you were going to do that, if you didn't buy a fretboard with a zero fret. I called Plek. You can only rent the machines. I've heard of the Plek machine. Now that you're saying it, I can't remember what that is offhand. I definitely have heard of it, though. I forget what you're talking about on the Plek. I've definitely seen it, heard it, but I don't know what the Plek machine is off the top of my head. I'm sure I would know as soon as somebody tells me, because I've seen it. I know I have. Okay, well, I hope you all got something out of today's Shop Talk. This was probably my least prepared I've been on a Shop Talk ever, and then all of that other stuff hit. It's that Rosa curse thing. I mean, I cannot believe the electric went off just a fraction of minute before we were ready to go live, and then Windows did an update, and then the sound wouldn't come back. It's like when it rains, it pours. It comes in threes, let me tell you. So thank you all for joining me today. Please tell your friends, pass the videos around, help me out any way you can. Check out the website, please. It's definitely much improved. Though it looks much the same, it's much improved.